All right, I will say good morning. A lot of beautiful Gemara today. Today's daf is Mem Aleph 41, but we are actually starting on Mem Amud Beis. On Mem Amud Beis. By the two dots, Ukvar Hayir Rabbi Tarfon Uzakanim. It's actually the last short line in the Gemara. It is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 lines up from the bottom. Ukvar Hayir Rabbi Tarfon Uzakanim Subin Ba'aliyas Beis Nitzeh Balud. So Rabbi Tarfon and the elders were reclining. They were sitting together in the upper chamber in Beis Nitzeh and Lud. Nishla She'il Zubifneim. So we'll say, listen to the following shai that came up before them. Talmud Gadol or Maisa Gadol? What's greater? Learning Torah or doing good deeds? Right? It's a fundamental shaila. Right? What's greater? So now Rabbi Tarfon or Maisa Gadol. Rabbi Tarfon said good deeds are most important. Rabbi Akiva Amar Talmud Gadol. Rabbi Akiva said no, learning is greater. Na'anu kulam va'amru. So all the rabbis weighed in and they finally decided Talmud Gadol. Learning is greater than action. Why? Sha Talmud maybe lidei maisa. Because it is learning that ultimately leads one to action. So we'll say, interestingly enough, wow. Oh man. It's an aggressive ringtone. I was saying it doesn't stop. Okay? So we'll say, amazingly enough, they say great learning is greater. Why? Because learning brings one to action. Now we'll say, essentially what's amazing about this Gemara is the following, which is that really at the end of the day, everyone's agreeing that action is actually greater. Action is actually greater than learning. Just the difference is that Lamaisa, again, what the Gemara is suggesting is that you can't really engage in real action without learning beforehand. Without Torah, person also this is my Simchol Yom. People think they're doing nice things, but what's guiding your good in life? Meaning, what's your barometer for what is good or what's not good? So if a person is left to their own devices to decide what's chesed, what's not chesed, people get themselves into all kinds of trouble. A person has to have Torah in order ultimately to know what to do that's good and what not to do in life. Look at Tosas for just a moment. Tosas says something very interesting. It's Tosas, the Tag Tosas, Talmud Gadol, Shatam maybe Lidi Maisa. So it's the last 8 lines of Tosas. Kilomar, Lemigmar, this is Tosas' conclusion. Lemigmar Lididei, Vadai Maisa Adif. Avala Agmuri Achrina, Vadai Adif Tfei Mimasa. So it's actually amazing. Tosas suggests that if it's a choice between your own personal learning and actions and doing good deeds, you should do good deeds. But if a difference between teaching others Torah and doing good deeds, teaching others Torah is certainly more important than doing good deeds. Which doesn't make sense. Because when you teach other people Torah, what are you doing? You're enabling others ultimately to do good as well. So it's incredible you said in Tosas that if I have a choice between doing good deeds, personal deeds, and enabling others to be able to perform good deeds, enabling others is a higher level than my own personal deeds. He goes on, he says, Limid lachrini lo amrina v'yesh mefarshim the adam shelo lamad adayin ubalim lochim yilmod chila o yaso b'maisa. So we'll say Benatos says if a person comes to ask the shayla, person doesn't know enough Torah or a lot of Torah, and his question is, should I set aside time to learn or should I engage in maisim tovim? Omrim lo lamud chila. We tell him sit down and learn. Why? We'll say this is an incredible yisod lefi she'ein am haaretz chasid. Because Rabbi say you can't be a pious Am Haaretz. A person can't be a pious, ignorant person for one simple reason. If I'm ignorant in Judaism, I don't know what to do. If I don't know what to do, piety is impossible. Piety is the result of informed, dynamic activity. But if I don't have Torah in my life, then at the end I'm an Am Haaretz. Then again, I could be a good person. Obviously, Kodesh Baruch Hu looks at each person on their level, but I can't be a chassid. I can't be pious without Torah. About Adam Shalamat Kvar Hama'asa Yosef Tomilva. So both say. So again, what comes out bottom line from this sugya is, if I haven't yet learned, I should focus on my learning, and the learning will lead me to Ma'asim Tovim. If I've already learned, then I should go ahead and focus on Ma'asim Tovim. If, however, again, I have the ability to teach others Torah, so teaching others Torah versus engaging in Ma'asim Tovim, teaching others Torah comes first. Why? Ultimately because it's enabling the growth of others. Tanya. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Gadol Talmud, Shekadam Lechala Arba Mishana L'Trumas L'Maises Chamisha V'Arba, U'L'Shmitim Shisha V'Achas L'Yavos Mea B'Shalosh. So Rabbi Yossi says, you see that Torah learning is greater than actions. Why? Because we were given the command to learn Torah more than 41 years before the obligation of Havrashas Chala, or for 54 years before Trumas and Maasros, for Shemitah 61 years, and for Yovel 103 years. The idea over here is that the obligation to learn preceded all of these other actional mitzvos. So the Gemara says, to which the Gemara says, but Yovel actually was 104 years before we were commanded Yovel Kasavar, Yovel mitchilasahu mishamit. Because Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that Yovel actually kicks in at the obligations or restrictions of Yovel, really obligations of Yovel, kick in on the beginning of the year. Therefore, it was 103 years until the beginning of the first Yovel. And the same way that it's important to learn prior to engaging in Ma'asim Tovim, Kachdino Kodim L'Maisa. So to Rebbe say, after 120, when it comes to divine judgment, the first thing we are judged about is, did we learn enough or not? And then we're judged for that even before we're judged for our Ma'asim Tovim. Rav Hamnuna, Ein Tchilas Dino Shel Adam, Ella al Divrei Torah. Because Rav Hamnuna said, after 120, the first thing I'm judged about in Shamayim is, did I learn enough Torah? Shnei Emar, Potim Mayim, Poter Mayim, Reishis Madon. Ukashim Shedino Kodim L'Maisa, Kach Schara Kodim L'Maisa. And the same way that judgment for Talmud Torah comes before judgment for actions, so too the reward for Talmud Torah comes before the reward for actions. Shnei Emar, Vayitein Lahem Artzos Goyim, Va'amal Baruch will give us the land of the nations, the effort of the nations. Yirshu Ba'avor Yishmeru Chukav V'Sora Sabi and Sora. Because ultimately, again, we guarded his statutes and we guarded his Torah. So again, you see over here the importance of Talmud Torah. This idea of Einam Haaretz Chasid. You can't truly be pious in life without Torah. Very simple idea, because how do I know what piety is if I don't have Torah? So number one, person first has to learn, then engage in Ma'asim Tovim. And again, after 120, the first questions HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks me is about my Talmud Torah. The first reward that's given is Talmud Torah, and unfortunately, the first measure of punishment is also Talmud Torah. I'll just point out over here, if you take a look, I'll just point out, Tosas actually brings down over here, we're just going to do it outside, but Tosas quotes the Gemara Maseches Brachos, in Maseches Shabbos, that says that after 120, when a person is brought in for din, they're asked 3 different questions about what they did with their life. And interestingly enough, the first question that they're actually asked, Tosas brings down, is, Nasasa v'nasata v'amuna. Did you deal honestly in your business things? Which I will say, by the way, just as an aside, based on the Silas Yisharim shir, we have a new understanding of what that means. When the Rebbeinu Shalom asks me, was I honest in business? Nasasa v'nasasa v'amuna. Did I go ahead and conduct myself honestly? So you know what that means? It's not just was I honest in business. What it means is, did I conduct business honestly means the heavy mema'it be'esek. Did I spend all of my time in the office, or did I leave time for spirituality as well? Because you could cheat 2 ways in business. You could cheat the person who you're doing business with, but I could also cheat the Ribono Shel Olam in business. How do I cheat the Ribono Shel Olam in business? So if I take all of my time for business and leave none of that for him, I'm cheating the Ribono Shel Olam. So the person has to be honest in business with the other, and also has to be honest in business with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If all the time is taken up by my parnasa, and none of it is left for my ruchnius, I might be honest with the people, the other human beings with whom I conduct business, but I'm not honest with the Ribono Shel Olam. So it says, tells us, that's the first question. Actually, just look at it. Ein tchilas dino shel adam ela divrei Torah, v'hadar parak ma'madlikin, kishamachlisin adam ladin omrim lo, nasata v'nasata be'emuna, hainu dafka le'yin she'ila, sheshoan lo amaso matan, aval miko makom nifra'in mimenu tchila ashal kava itim l'Torah. So Tosafos says, even though that's the first question that's asked, when it comes to actual din, when it comes to actual judgment, the first thing we are actually judged about is, did we learn enough Torah or not? Back to the Gemara Bosai. Says the Gemara. Last two lines. So remember, the Mishnah made a very dramatic statement. The Mishnah says that whoever does not spend time learning Chumash, learning halacha, and engaging in derech eretz, engaging in good deeds, so such a person like that is eino min hayishuv, is not considered to be a contributing member of mankind. So says the Gemara, Am Rabbi Yochanan, upasal le'edos. Such a person cannot give eidos. Now, what does that mean? Such a person cannot give eidos. Remember, again, this is not a person who's engaging in averus, right? This is not a person who's doing terrible things. This is a person who's not learning and not doing any kind of maisin tovim. Says the Gemara, you're pasal eidos. Look at this. I'll say something. Look at the last Rashi. Upasal eidos. The chayvan she'ino min hayishuv ein makpid al atzmo ve'ein lo boshes panim. So, listen to this. The idea is that if you are not a contributing member of society in some way, shape, or form, then what? Then you have no self-respect. No self-respect. Which is the common down there. For example, the Gemara discusses that the Mesachik Bakuvya, the professional gambler, is also not permitted to give eidos. He's not permitted to give testimony. Why? Same idea. In order to go ahead and be kosher eidos, you have to be someone who contributes to the fabric of society in some way. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer, or well, for sure not a lawyer, right? But I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love the lawyers. Thank you. So the idea also is that you don't have to be someone who has an active profession. A person could be a garbage man. A person could be what. The point is, do something that contributes to society. Provide a service for humanity. If I'm not providing any service for humanity, then Lamaisa, again, that's not considered to be a self-respecting individual. If you're not a self-respecting individual, then the Gemara says, we're scared that you don't have integrity. If you don't have integrity, then you're not honest. If you're not honest, then you can't give eidos. That's why, again, the professional gambler who makes his money through taking other people's money, you're not contributing anything to society. So if you're not contributing, so you can't give eidos. The Gemara says over here, somebody who has no Torah and no derech eretz. Derech eretz means there's no maisim tovim. It doesn't mean that I'm not nice to people. It means there's no maisim tovim. I'm not contributing anything to society. You're pasal eidos. Tana Rabbanon. Ha'ochel b'shuk. Somebody who eats in the marketplace. Harei zedom lekelev. This is someone ultimately who is comparable to a dog. So this is actually quite dramatic as well. That somebody who eats in the marketplace, which is somebody who eats standing up, walking around, ultimately again is like a dog. V'yesh omrim pasal le'edus. And some say ultimately again that he's pasal le'edus. They both say, so no, it's not the Kiddush. Right? So the idea, he's talking about someone who's out in public walking around. I'm sorry? New York Hot Dogs, right? The idea of you're walking around in public in a confined area where the idea is that people are eating a simcha or a kiddush. That's not what the Gemara is referring to over here. But somebody who's out in the marketplace. The idea is that eating itself should be an act of kiddusha. And if a person is just walking around and eating, that's what a dog does. A dog takes a little here, a dog takes a little there. I'm sorry?
In the new building, we'll have chairs.
In Mirat Hashem, there'll be seating. Every Shabbos will be a seated kiddush. It's the halacha still codifies it today. Absolutely, this is a din. This is a din in Kavod Adam. You know what it is? You ever see like when a person's running around and eating, the act of eating itself becomes like very, very fatumot. It's not kaddish. The idea is you're walking around, you're talking, your mouth is full this and that. That's not how a person eats. A person eats benachos. A person eats at least stationary, even if they're not actively sitting. But a person eats as an avoda. A person's running around and eating. That's like a kelev. So Rashi says over here, same idea. Rashi says, it's the last few lines in Rashi. V'china ochel b'shuk hoil ve'in makbid al kavodo. It's not bakavadik. It's not bakavadik. Person that makbid on his kavod ino bosh l'salza ba'atz uveli pasel. So I'll say a person who has no problem just running around and eating. So ultimately, again, it's not makbid enough on his kavod. Therefore, the Gemara says that he's pasel la'idus. Pasel la'idus. Tosus has a whole piece over here. So Tosus says, you just look at it quickly, there's so much to do and so little time. So Tosus says, if you skip down a little bit, in Tosus, Perish Rabbeinu Chananel, it's 2, 4, 6, 8 lines down. Tosus Rabbeinu Chananel, the Hacha Meiri Shechotef Va'ochel. Ve'im Tomar, Im Keim Pshita de Pasal de Gazun. So we'll say, so Rabbeinu Chananel, what are you talking about? It's a person who walks on the marketplace, and what does he do? He grabs from the different food stalls and he eats. So ve'im tomar, of course he's pasal la'edis if he's doing that. Why? He's a thief. To which the Gemara says, "V'yishlomar shechote pachos mishav pruta." Oh, he's a frum thief. Rabbi say, so what does a frum thief know? A frum thief knows that you're only chayiv if you steal more than a shavar pruta. So what does he do? He takes a grape from over here, he takes this from over here, it's pachas and shavar pruta, you're not chayiv for that. So the Gemara says, inami, shegazol davar shino makbid alav, or he steals something that ultimately, again, people are not makbid on. Listen to this. This is an incredible idea. Kigon sheholech eitza hamochrim v'toy mishal kula ma'at ma'at kilu rotze liknos mehem v'necha hashta shekorin kelev shedom lekol kelev ochel kan ma'at v'kan ma'at. So we'll say, listen to this. So the idea is, what does he do? He goes vendor to vendor. And Abba said, when you go to vendors, you can still see if you go to Machane Yehuda, you can just, right? So what happens? So if you express interest, they'll give you the taste. So who are we talking about over here? The guy who has no interest in buying anything, but he's going to chaparain. What is he going to do? He's going to have a full meal. I'm going to start off here, I'm going to end at the other side, and I'm going to taste a little bit from each vendor. And he pretends like he's interested in purchasing something, so he asks for a taste of it. That says Tosis, that says Domel Keleb. That's like a dog. That's what a dog does. A dog sees a little bit of food over here, it takes it over here, a little bit of food over there, it takes it over here. So that's Domel Keleb. Finally, Rabbeinu Tam Perish, Da'ocha B'shuk Hainu Sha'ocha Su'uda De Pas. Diginayos. And this is one of the opinions that's codified in the Shulchan Aruch. Rabbeinu Tam says that this idea that a person who eats in the marketplace is like he's like a dog, that Rabbeinu Tam says that's someone who eats a real meal just while walking around the public area. That's Domalakav. We'll say the idea being that if possible, a person should avoid eating in a way that's walking around the marketplace. This doesn't refer to a person's having a snack. This is talking about, like Rabbeinu Tam says, person eats a real meal while running all over the place. That's not right. That's Domel Kelev. So again, literally the Gemara says they're pasala edus. Amar Avidi bar Avin halacha ki yishomrim. The halacha is like yishomrim, that indeed somebody who eats in the shuk, bless you, is like a Kelev. Darash bar Kafra. We'll say amazing Gemara. Ragzon, top of Mem Aleph. Ragzon lo alsa biyada ele ragzenusa. We'll say there's an amazing Gemara. If you're an angry individual, the only thing you will have left in life is your anger. We'll say an incredible yisod. Why? Because if you're angry, ultimately you will lose everything. Because even your loved ones will get tired, ultimately, of being around you. So, Lamais, at the end of the day, you'll lose your marriage, you'll lose your children, you'll lose your friends, you'll lose everything. And at the end of the day, you'll be left, you and your anger. Adam tov matimim osumi pri ma'asav. For a good person, Rabosai, he will be able one day to eat the fruits of his labors. Someone who doesn't learn any Torah and does not engage in any way in advancing the cause of humanity, doesn't contribute anything, better to take a neder, not to get hana'ah from such an individual. Better to distance myself from such a person. Shena'emar uvemoshav leitzim lo yashav. That he literally, again, as you say in Tehillim, that it is best, ashrei ish, praiseworthy is the individual who does not sit in the company of scorners, of leitzim, of silly individuals. To which the Gemara says, moshav al moshav leitzim. Such a person, I will say, doesn't learn and doesn't do anything to contribute to the greater good of humanity, even in some small way, is a let's, and better to avoid that person's company. Hadron Allah, ha'isha niknis. Mazel tov, Rav Hossein. Says the Mishnah, Ish Mekadesh. I will say, now this, I have to tell you, this is very exciting. Really very exciting. Because this second parak of Kiddushin is one of the most wonderful, every parak is wonderful in Shas. This parak is inevitably, the truth is, if you've gone through yeshiva, you've learned this parak at some point in time, right? Because it's an incredible parak. And what's also great is, this is right beginning Ben Azmanim, right? Mamish, so over Yantiv, everybody has more time to learn, which is an incredible yisod. No matter where you are, you're home, you're away, make sure to get yourself to a Daf Yomi shir. Make sure to get, because obviously don't use the podcast. Or if you find the shir on the podcast, please let me know. Over Yantiv, right? But this, I'm sorry. She keeps one day. He has a special header for the website. The website. That's I would say very, very important to stay on top of your learning while you're away. If you're going to be at a hotel, all of the hotels have scholars and residents. All of them have Daf Yomi Shiurim. No excuse. You have to keep up on your learning. And if you're going to be home, then of course you come to shir. If you're going to be away in a different community, Baruch Hashem, if the community has a shul, they definitely have a rav, they have a magid shir, they have someone. It's very important to always keep up on your learning. Don't come back every year. I hear, I can't tell you, the drop-off rate from Daf Yomi on Pesach, like the curve goes up. It's incredible. You can't drop off. There's absolutely no excuse to fall behind on your learning on Yontif, meaning it's counterintuitive. You could even sleep for a couple of hours in the afternoon and there's still time to learn. So you have to make sure to keep on track. Don't fall behind. In fact, I would say it's a great time to chazer previous Masechtas. If you're not going to chazer previous Masechtas, get a little bit ahead in the Daf Yomi, but you don't want to fall behind on this. Says the Mishnah. That's not the preemptive Musar. That'll be tomorrow. So says the Mishnah. Ha'ish mekadesh bo b'shlucho. So both say, man can mekadesh a woman, either himself or through his shaliach. Ha'isha miskadesh is bo b'shlucho. A woman could become mikudeshes either through herself, meaning she could accept Kiddushin through herself or through her agent. Ha'ish mekadesh is bito, kishi nara, bo b'shlucho. A man could go ahead and be Makadish's daughter when she is a Nara. I will say again, a Nara means from the age of 12 to 12 and a half, either herself or with her Shaliach. Fine. So says the Gemara, Hashta b'shlucho mekadesh bomi boy. So ask the Gemara, I don't understand. If you're telling me that a man could be mekadesh his wife himself, that a man could be mekadesh through a Shaliach, so obviously if I could do it through a Shaliach, then what? I could do it myself as well. Why do they need to say that? To which the Gemara says, Rav Yosef, because the Mishnah is coming to teach me mitzvah bo yosir b'shlucho. Because the Mishnah is teaching me a nuanced message, which is what? It is more important for me to mekadesh a woman myself than it is to do it through a shaliach. Why? Kihad Rav Safra machrich reisha Rava malach shibuta. Because also when preparing for Shabbos, Rav Safra used to singe the head of the animal. In other words, Rav Safra used to prepare the meat for Shabbos himself. Rava used to salt the fish. So the idea of Rabbi said that when it comes to any mitzvah, there's a concept. Ultimately, look at Rashi. Mitzvah bo yosher b'shlucho dechi asik gufa b'mitzvah b'mitzvos b'kabel schar tfei. Rabbi says it's very important you sewed. Don't outsource mitzvos. Whenever possible, do it yourself. Therefore, of course, I can be mekadesh with a shaliach, but it is better for me to perform the mitzvah of kiddushin myself with the woman than a shaliach. The same way that all of these great rabbis participated in the preparation for Shabbos themselves. They had other people. Maybe I'm sure their wives were taking care of it. They had perhaps had help in the home was taking care of it. But there was an inyan. They weren't needed, but there was an inyan to participate in a mitzvah yourself. Others explain, it's not just that it's important for a man to be mekadesh himself, but rather, again, it's really usher for a man to delegate the responsibility of Kiddushin to a shaliach. It's important for him to do it himself. Why? It is usher for a man to be mekadesh until he sees her. We'll say this is very important. You can't marry a woman without first seeing her. Now it sounds intuitive to us, but we'll say understand. Back in times of the Gemara, where marriages were more often than not arranged. So you can marry someone without. So the Gemara is saying, no, you need to see her before you get married. Why? Shema yira ba davar maguna b'tiskan alav. For the most simple reason, I will say that's what? There has to be attraction. I will say it's an incredibly important yisod. Chazal understood and a basic idea that if a husband is not attracted to his wife, she could have the most wonderful midos, she could have alamilas. If he's not attracted to her, the marriage is doomed. So therefore, again, it says the Gemara, a man has to make sure that he's attracted to his wife. V'rachmana Amar, because if he's not attracted to his wife, ultimately again he will come to despise her. V'rachmana Amar, and the Torah says, V'yahavta l're'acha kamocha. We'll say there is a mitzvah to love every person, and that every person includes your wife. Therefore, Chazal are telling us that l'maisa, again, although technically speaking, one could go ahead and effect kiddushin with a shaliach, it should not be done. It should not be done. Rather, he should mekadesh woman himself in order that he sees her and knows that he's attracted to her. V'chi itmar Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef's statement, Rabbosai, of mitzvah bo yoser mebishlucho, that it's better, because remember, according to this version, it's not just the pshat that it's better for a man to be mekadesh the wife rather than going ahead and doing it through a shaliach, but rather, again, it's absolutely halachically preferable on every single level. Rav Yosef's statement that in general it's better to do things yourself than do it through a shaliach was actually mentioned on the end of the Mishnah. What's the end of the Mishnah? Itmar ha'isha miskadesh is ba'u b'shlucha. A woman could accept kiddushin herself. or through her shaliach. Hashta b'shlucha mikadsha ba. Hashta b'shlucha mikadsha bami boy. So I don't understand. If you're already telling me that she could accept that she could accept Kiddushin through an agent, isn't that obvious that she could accept Kiddushin herself? Rav Yosef to teach us mitzvah ba yosef b'shlucha, that it is greater mitzvah for a woman to accept Kiddushin herself than it is for her to do so through a shaliach. Because again, in general, it's always better to do mitzvahs yourself rather than to delegate them to a shlichus. Kihad Rav Safra machrich reisha, Rava malach shibuta. Just like Rav Safra used to singe the head of the animal, Rava used to go ahead and salt the fish. The idea being on both sides. Now again, the Gemara's understanding over here is that Kiddushin itself is a mitzvah, and therefore again, it is better for the woman to accept the Kiddushin herself rather than through her shaliach. Avabaha isur lesba. Rabbi says is actually amazing, but there is no isur for a woman to go ahead and get married without seeing her husband. It's amazing. It is isur for a man to go ahead and mekadesh a woman without going ahead and seeing her first. But it is not isur for a woman to marry a man without seeing him first. Why? The Gemara says, Kidrei Shlakish. Amrei Shlakish, Tav lemesav tandu me lemesav armala. Because from a woman's perspective, it is better to be with someone than to be with no one. Right? So I'll say, what does this mean? This is an incredible yisod. What the Gemara, look at Rashi. Rashi says, the Amar Rachmana, Tavla Meis Reish Lakish, Tavla Meis of Tandu, Moshalhi, Shanashim Omros Abal Kolduhu, Shutov La Shevesim Shnei Gufim Misheves Almana. That sometimes a woman says about her husband, look, he's better than nothing, right? The idea being on both sides, they understand. I think right. This is often. This is a marital refrain that's heard often, right? The idea will say is that from the Gemara is telling you just the difference in marital perspectives. From a woman, marriage was a much more necessary entity for financial support, for physical security, and therefore, again, from a time obviously things have changed in certain ways, but not as much as people think. The idea is that for a woman, being in a marriage and being in a relationship was the most important thing. Even if the husband was not of the utmost quality, this idea that she was not alone, that there was marital companionship and security was exceptionally important. From a man's perspective, a man, according to the Gemara, at least could get along fine without marriage as well. Therefore, again, Lamaisa, if there's not an attraction from the beginning, the marriage is doomed. Therefore, the man should not be Mikdash without seeing her first. The woman can become Mikudeshes even without seeing her future husband first. But nevertheless, it's still important for her to accept, better for her to accept Kiddushin herself, because in general, better to always do mitzvahs yourself rather than to delegate them to a shaliach. A man, could accept Kiddushin for his daughter while she is a nara. So the Gemara says, Kishi nara and Kishi kitana lo. What is that? Makes it sound like it's only when she's a nara, but not when she's a kitana. But that's not true. You can accept Kiddushin for your daughter at any age, even when she's a nara. So the Gemara says, Misayeya l'Rav, the Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, v'yitem Rav Elazar. But just you should know, sometimes, just sometimes that when we read these Gemaras, like a woman would rather be married to anyone than no one. Like it makes us a little bit. Sometimes we think like it's like a little bit sexist, a little bit misogynistic. We'll say that's only because understand in our society everything has to be politically correct, and we assume that equality means everyone is the same. We'll say so that Judaism does not buy into that idea. People are not the same. People are not the same. And men and women certainly are not the same at all. They require different things in life. They need different things out of marriage. They need they're different personalities. So again, when Chazal are expressing is, yes, men and women look for two very different things from marriage. Two very different things. Now, obviously, this is rooted in certain realities over here of the Gemara. That lemaisa, again, that a woman needs a certain level of security and safety for marriage. But it's like a lot of these tenets are not that different today in terms of what it is that a woman seeking from a marriage, what it is that a man seeking from a marriage, and for a woman, the greatest fear in life ultimately is what? Is being alone. That is the greatest fear. Men have many fears as well. Being alone may be one of those fears, but it's one amongst many fears. But again, for a woman, the notion of being alone is the greatest fear that was on a woman's mind. So the notion of a woman saying, you know what, this guy might not be my Prince Charming, he might not be the guy I dreamed about, but at the end of the day, he's fine. He's fine. Such a yesod still exists today as well. Alright, so the Gemara goes weiter. So the idea over here, so the Gemara asks, why does it only say kitana? What about a na'ara? Why does it only say na'ara? Why not kitana? So it says the Gemara, Says the Gemara, the Amrav Yehuda, Amrav Item, Rabbi Elazar, Ashal Adam Shikadesh Isvito Kishikitana. Rabbi says amazing because Rabbi Elazar says a man, it is usher for a man to be mekadesh his daughter while she's still a kitana. Achit tigadal v'tomar beploni anirotza. Rather, a man should wait until his daughter is old enough to be able to express her desire to marry a particular man. So we'll say this is actually quite interesting because throughout our journeys in Shas, we've discussed Kiddushin Kitana many times, and every single time we discuss it, it leaves us scratching our heads a little bit because although we know, look, Kadosh Baruch Hu allows for it, it sounds so strange. So the notion of marrying off a minor girl without her consent, to which Rabbi Elazar says, look, even though technically it's permitted, one shouldn't really do it. A man should only marry off his daughter when she's old enough, ultimately, again, to express her consent and her desire to enter into a marital union with a particular man. I will say, take a look at Tosas just very quickly. I'm telling you, these sugyas are jam-packed. So Tosas says over here something amazing. So Tosas says, as Asr la Adam Sheikhadesh Espito Kishikitana Afagav Damar la El Disur Leka Mishum de Tavla Mesav Tandu Hanimili Bigdo Shimiskadesh Stay Atzma Techeva Shinisratis Leka Lamecha Shem Taxur Avakitana Shimiskadesh Idea Viha Ikalamecha Shem Haisa Gidol Haisa Misratis. So we'll say, so remember, Tosa says we just seem to have contradicted ourselves because you just got finished saying that what? That a woman would rather be with anyone than be alone. Now you're telling me that a man can't be Mekadesh his Kitana daughter, only his Nara daughter. To which Tosas says, no. What you mean that a woman would rather be with anyone than be alone? That's when she's old enough to articulate that desire to want to be in a marriage. Then we say, okay, that she wants to be married, she wants to be in a marital union. But when she's a Kitana, she's not expressing any type of marital desire, then Lamaisa, better for the father not to marry her off. Watch this. This is amazing. So Tosas says, remember, this is the Tosafis, right? The Tosafis. So we're talking about 1100s, 1200s. So it says now, we marry off our daughters when they are kitanos. So what do we do with the same with the Rebbe Lazar? This is Tosas telling you, giving you a window as to what happened historically. Listen to what he writes. Hainu, mishum shebechol yom vayom hagolos misgaber aleinu. Because says Tosas, every single day, Gullus is getting more difficult. What's happening? What's happening historically? What's happening? The Crusades. Every single day, Gullus is getting more intense. V'im yesh sipek biat adam achshav laseis lebito nedunya shema la'achar zman lo yes sipek biado v'teshev bito aguna liolam. So says Tosas, you know what? In our day and age, when a man has the means to marry off his daughter, doesn't matter how old she is. You know what he does? He marries her off. You know why? Because who knows what tomorrow is going to bring. Who knows if tomorrow a person is going to have the means, a person is going to have the ability, a person is going to even have his life. That's the truth. So therefore, again, Tosas just points out, and this is amazing, even though Rabbi Elazar comes along and says, do not marry your daughter off when she's a kitana, and that indeed is the way we pass. And even though the license is there, we say a father should not marry off his daughter until she's old enough to express, to articulate her intent to want to enter into the marriage. Tosas says, in dire circumstances, we married off our daughters as kitanos because, again, we knew not what the next day would bring. Incredible idea. Says the Gemara, Shlichos Minalan. Where do we know Shlichos? So remember again, the Mishnah introduced us to the idea of Shlichos. So from where do we know Shlichos? So which the Gemara says, this Sanya, Vishalach, Melamed Shu'osa Shaliach, Vishilcha, Melamed Shi'osa Shliach. So remember again, this is a pasuk by Gittin. The pasuk says, Vishilcha mi beso. So the pasuk could have just said v'shalach, meaning the pasuk could have just said v'girsha, v'garash, right? He divorced her, but it doesn't say v'garash. Instead, it says v'shilcha, it says v'shalach. He'll send her away, and it doesn't just say v'shalach, but rather it uses the elongated form of v'shilcha. So says the Gemara from the fact that it could have used the word v'shalach, from the fact that it could have used the word v'girsha, but instead it used the word shalach, teaches us that a man could go ahead and appoint a shaliach to go ahead and deliver a get to his wife. The fact that he used the longer form of v'shilcha teaches us that what? That she could go ahead and appoint a shaliach to be makabel the get. To which the Gemara says, v'shalach v'shilcha melamed shashliach osa shaliach. Furthermore, again, from here we also learn that what? That a shaliach could also appoint another agent to execute the agency. Ashkecha megerushin. So we'll say it turns out then that we've learned about the concept of shlichos from where? From gerushin, from the word v'shilcha. V'shilcha, even though the Torah could have used the word v'girsha, he divorced her, used the word v'shilcha to teach us that agency is a possibility for the delivering of the get. So now we've learned the concept of agency as it applies to gerushin. So the Gemara says, Kiddushin, how do we know about Kiddushin? that you could go ahead. How do we know that a Makim and Kaddish Shomen? Through Shlichos. V'chi tema diyalaf migerishin. Maybe you'll say, I will learn it out from divorce. Malagerishin shkeshna bakarcha. You can't do that. Why? Because Gerushin could be affected even against the will of the woman. But I can't learn from Gerushin that I'm makim and kaddish woman as well. With Rosh Shliach. Amakra, v'yatza v'haisa, makish havili yitzia, ma yitzia, mashri shliach, af haviyanai mashri shliach. So we'll say, what do we do? There's Gzer Shava of haviya yitzia. We compare the process ultimately of marriage to divorce. Just as divorce can be accomplished through a shaliach, so too ultimately again marriage you could give her Kaddish through a shaliach as well. I ve'alaha that which we learned Homer the shluchot say b'tarum. But is another interesting case. Let's say I say to my shaliach, go ahead, go and take truma. Separate out truma from my produce. So we'll say the halacha by truma is there are three ways that you could take truma. You could do what's called ba'ayin yafet, generously, which is 1/40th of your crop. Stingily ayin ra'ah, which is 1/60th of your crop. And mida beinanis, which is 1/50th of your crop. So let's say I go ahead and I say to my shaliach, go and take truma for me. So torim kidas malabayis, but I don't give him an amount. So what does the agent do? The agent says, well, look, I know Silber is a generous guy, so therefore I'm going to go ahead and separate out 1/40th of the crop. But let's say my shaliach doesn't know what type of giver I am. He doesn't know, am I stingy or am I generous? So what does he do? Torim bebeinanis achad mechamishim. So he gives the middle of the road 1/50th of the crop. Amud beis piches asara hosif asara. Let's say again he goes ahead and what? Let's say he adds. Let's say he instead of taking 1/50th, he takes 1/60th, or he takes 1/40th. Truma so truma. So both say the truma is still a valid designation. So in other words, that lemaisa again, if he doesn't know how much I would normally give, whatever amount he gives is fine. Meaning 1/40th, 1/50th, 1/60th. I think Gemara says truma minolav. So first of all, now what do we just see? We see over here that what? That lemaisa again, truma could be taken through a shaliach. You could separate truma through a shaliach. Where do we know that from? Maybe you'll say we learn out truma from gerushin. We learn out just like we could divorce your wife with a shaliach. So you can take truma with a shaliach. That doesn't work. Why? We'll say gerushin is a mundane, unholy matter. Truma, on the other hand, deals with consecrated property or kadosh property. So who's to say you can learn out one from the other? Amakra atem gam atem l'rabos. Because the pasuk says, "Kain tarimu gam atem." So atem means you can separate out truma. Gam, who's the also comes to include your shaliach. That even a shaliach could separate out trumas and maisros as well, truma as well. V'nichtov rachmana b'truma v'neisa hanach v'nigru. So why don't we just learn out the concept of shlichos by truma, and I can learn out gittin and kiddushin from truma, to which the Gemara says mishum de'igal mifrach sheken yesh lev machshava. We'll say because truma is different. Why? Because truma, is actually quite fascinating. You could separate. You could cognitively designate truma. In other words, if I look at a pile of produce and I decide in my mind that the left-hand corner is going to be truma, lemaisa again that works. Lemaisa that works. So therefore, again, because truma ultimately again applies b'machshava, so again I would have thought I can't use it as a paradigm to learn out other things. I have a hadis now. Listen to this. Chabura sha'avat pischa. Listen to this. You have a group of people doing carbon pesach together, and what happens? They lose the sheep. So what happens? Listen, they say to Reuven, listen, go find the sheep. And when you find it, shecht it on our behalf. What happens? So Reuven goes out and he finds the sheep and he shechts on Erev Pesach on behalf of the Chabura. And we'll say, what happened? The Chevra got tired of waiting. So what did they do? They purchased another sheep, right? And they shechted that sheep as well. So what's the halacha? We'll say, so remember again, for Karban Pesach, you could only be part of one Chabura, right? You remember the I heard from a friend, remember the stovetop commercial? Years and years ago, right? I could talk about television from below the age of 10. I feel like that, right? You know the Stovetop commercial, right? Jimmy, what are you having for dinner? Jimmy, what do you have? What time is dinner? Right? So you can't do that at Karban Pesach, right? By Karban Pesach, you can only be part of one Chabura. So the Shaila now of here is essentially you've had two Karban Pesach shechted. So which Karban Pesach can you eat from? So what happens? So says the Gemara, Im shelo nishchat rishon, if the animal that Reuven shechted, if that one was shechted first, so who so we'll say if Reuven shechted the found animal first, then lemaisa, again that's the Karban Pesach. Reuven eats of that animal, and the rest of the Chabura eats of that animal as well. So the Gemara says, So what do you see from here? Minavan. So now what you just told me is that what? They're shlichus by Karban Pesach. Right? That one person could shecht on behalf of the entire Chabura from Karban Pesach. Where do we know that from? Maybe you'll say, well, they're not Karban Pesach from Truma and Gerushin, because now we've established that Shlichos works by Gerushin, that's from Beshilcha. We know that Shlichos works by Truma, that's Gam Atem. So maybe I'll say I'll learn our Karban Pesach from Truma and Gerushin, to which the Gemara says, can't do that. Why? Eitzel Kachim. We'll say again, Gerushin is Chol, is mundane. Even Truma is considered to be Chol when compared to Karban Pesach, because Karban Pesach is a sacrificial matter. So how could I learn out Kachim from Chol? Nafkalim with Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha. We learn from Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, Minay Sheshlucha Shel Adam Kimoso. Boss, it is amazing. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha says, in general, where do we learn out the concept of Shlucha Shel Adam Kimoso? Where do we learn out that a person's agent is like himself? Shene Emar V'Shachatu Oso Kol Kahal Adas Yishal Ben Abar. We'll say, amazing. Where do we learn out from? Karban Pesach. Because we're going to say about Karban Pesach, the entire assembly of Klal Yisrael will shech the Pesach bein ha'arbaim in the afternoon, or midday. V'chi kalakal kulan shochtin. Does the entire assembly of Klal Yisrael shech the Karban Pesach? Remember again, shchitas ksher b'zar. Remember again, you can have a non-kohen shecht the Karban Pesach, but the idea is you only have one person involved in shchita. Ella. So what does it mean when it says everyone is going to shecht the Karban Pesach? Ella. Rather, we'll say, what do you see from here? You see that a person's agent is an extension of himself, and therefore, again, the agent shechts it on behalf of everyone else, and therefore what? And therefore what? And therefore, again, from here we learn that shlucha shel adam kimoso. So if that's the case, says the Gemara, nichtav rachmana b'kadsha b'nei tzihana b'nei grumine. If that's the case, just let the Torah teach the concept of shlichos by Karban Pesach, which is kachim, and I'll learn out the other cases of gerushin and truma from that. So the Gemara says, mishum de'ikal mifrach. So the Gemara says, because the truth is you can't learn from Kachim. Why? Because it was like Kachim is the exception. The overwhelming majority of aspects of Kachim are carried out through an agent, through a Kohen. Therefore, again, of course, I can say that Shlichus applies to Kachim, but that might not be the case by everything else. So the Gemara says, okay, so if I can't learn out one case from the other, let me go ahead and create two cases as the paradigm. I'll learn out everything else from there. Say, hey. So the Gemara says, which one should we go ahead? Hey, TC, lo nichtav rachmana b'kachim v'tisi mehana. So let the Torah not state it by Karban Pesach, and I'll learn it out from Truma and Gerushin. Well, that doesn't work. Why? That does work. Why? Because you can't learn out Kachim from Chol. Next, lo nichtav rachmana b'gerushin v'tisi mehana. So let the Torah not write b'shilcha, and I'll learn out that agency works from Gerushin, from Truma, and from Karban Pesach. That doesn't work. Why? Because both by Karban Pesach as well as by Truma, Machshava works. In other words, by Karban, you can invalidate a Karban b'Machshava. You could also designate the Karban Machshava, and by Truma, you could designate Truma of Machshava as well. So Machshava works, but again, Machshava doesn't work in these other areas. Elo, lo lichtov rachmana b'Truma, v'teisi mehana. So leave out Truma, leave out Kamatem, and learn out Truma from Gerushin b'Shilcha, and for Karban Pesach, called Das B'nai Yisrael. So the Gemara says, oh, Chanami, you're right, that could work. But if that's the case, ve'ela atem gam atem lamali. So then, if I learn out Truma from Karban Pesach and Gerushin, so what do I do with the gam atem by Truma? Then Rabbi Yana, gam atem. What does gam atem teach me? Ma atem b'nei bris. Just like I am a member of the faith, I am a member of the covenant, I'm a bris, I'm a Jew, so too my shaliach must be a Jew as well. So the Gemara says, Halam alikra. Why do you need a pasuk for that? So we'll say it's obvious. Because remember again, Rabbi Yana already taught me that what? A Gentile cannot become a shaliach for a woman shliach to accept her get. Why? Because she's not in the parasha of getting Kiddushin. In other words, we know that my shliach has to be an extension of myself. In order for my shaliach to be exception on myself, then what? He has to have the same level of chiyuv as me. If that's the case, then of course a Gentile cannot be my shaliach. Truma is different. Why? It's sachadait chamina eved delav bar hateirahu klau. Aval oved kochavim ho v'isya b'truma dinafshe. But I will say, see, it could be. Actually, you know, we'll say what we're going to do is we're going to stop over here. Because I want to share with you just a brief thought for B'dikas Chometz. So we're going to pick up Emir Hashem with Rabbi Yanai. So we'll do a little bit longer. Just to remind you, tomorrow morning we start at 5:45. Shacharis is at 6:30 because of the Siyam B'chorim. So we're going to start Emir Hashem 5:45. But let me share with you just a brief idea, a little hisorus for B'dikas Chometz tonight. So we'll say I know I ended a little abruptly. So just, again, what we're left with is, we're learning out where does shlichus come from. So far we have 3 sources for shlichus. We learn it out from Kiddushin, from divorce, bless you, from shilcha, and once to know by divorce, I want to know by Kiddushin. We learn it out from truma, gam atem, comes to tell me that a shliach could also separate out truma, and I know karban pesach. Kol Adas B'nai Yisrael. What the Gemara essentially is now focusing on is, why do I need 3 sources? Now I know that I can't have one, because no one case encompasses all, but let me have 2 paradigmatic cases, and then what? I'll learn out all those other cases from the paradigm. So we're leaving off with that question, and Amir will answer that question tomorrow. So let me just share with you a short idea by B'dikas Chometz.